Next, naming your course. This is an art form. This is one of those areas where if you have an intellectual employee mind, you're going to go crazy. Sometimes the name of the course is the last thing I have. Sometimes the name of the course is the first thing I have. Sometimes it changes while I'm doing the marketing and writing the sales page. And sometimes it changes many times. My final course that I did in the Mary Kay world called Success and Fulfillment, that took me over a month to name. And I knew what I wanted the course to be. I knew I wanted it to be my final course for that group. And so I kept asking myself, what's my drop the mic name and content? And after about 3 weeks, I had it. One of the things that I say all the time is whatever it takes, and you got to go all in. Now, I'm a poker player somewhat, and all in is one of the things that they say in poker. It's where you put all the chips in the center, and that means you just go full in. It's a full commitment. In baseball, we used to call it balls out. We just go all the way in, and it feels good to me. I actually have goosebumps thinking about it right now and talking about it. So finally, after several discussions with the team and what do you think and what do you think, we're like, awesome, all in. That's the name of this course, because that's what we got to do when it comes to success. We got to go all in. We got to burn the bridges. We got to cut ourselves off from the retreat, all that stuff, right? I loved it. Started writing the sales page, started getting the names all ready and stuff like that. And then the company, Mary Kay, came up with a year-long slogan called All In. I was pissed. I really was. Because I was like, that's mine. And but oh my goodness, thank God I didn't release that thing. That name didn't come to me 3 weeks ahead of time, because I would have started marketing it as All In, and then the company would have made their big announcement as All In, and I would have looked like an absolute idiot. I would have looked like I was trying to play off of the company, and I would have had to tell everybody, no, it was my idea first. It would have been a disaster. So thankfully, my higher creator who was paying attention and knew what was coming down the chute was like, all right, dude, this is going to be a disaster. So I'm going to flummox you for a while. And then I'm going to go ahead and give you what you want, but I'm going to make sure that it's not ready until you realize you got to do something else. Anyway, so after another couple, a week or two, then what came out of me is, what do I really want to teach them? There are two elements. I want to teach them how to succeed, but I want to teach them how to be fulfilled. And so anyway, the program ended up being Success and Fulfillment. So I say all of that because when people ask, how should I name the course? Or can you tell me, what are the 3 steps to find a name? I don't know. Sometimes it's a month-long process, and sometimes it's just right away. The less perfection you have and pressure you have in your desire to name the course, the better name you're going to have, because you're going to be more open to your wisdom. You're going to be more open to the downloads that come to you. You're going to be paying more attention to what people are saying. And I tend to think of it like I want to capture the name rather than figure out the name. Let me explain to you what that means. When you are paying attention to how words are hitting your ears coming from your mouth, you'll notice that some of them land different. And when you pay attention to the words coming out of other people's mouths, some of them land different. I have a Facebook friend who recently did a video, and she was talking about being clean and sober for 7 months now. And she's a singer. She just released an album, and she was talking the other day about her journey to become clean and sober. And she just realized that she wasn't giving all of, in her words, I wasn't giving all of me to me. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. All of me to me. And so I, just liked that little phrase. I commented back on that phrase. And then she kept talking and she said some version again. And then she said some other version again. And she said, all of me. So, and I was on her video for like 4 minutes. And I heard all of me, all of me, all of me. And so I typed in, have you written a song called All of Me? And she immediately after her video was like, no, but oh my God, that's perfect. That's everything. That means so much to me. Right. Because I heard the words come out of her mouth differently. And I heard the words come out of her mouth often. Usually that's our heart saying, listen to me, pay attention to me. Now it's difficult for us, it's more difficult at least for us to do it with ourselves than for us to do it with other people. But once we open up that channel and we start thinking from a title perspective, and we start paying attention to the energy in the words and not just the intellect of the words, then it's like we'll open up that radar and we'll be able to hear it from other people, and it'll be easier then to start hearing it for ourselves. That's the best way to capture the right, quote unquote, right names for your program instead of intellectually figure it out. So energetically, that's how I want you to think about names. Now let's talk about some of the concepts that are important. People buy outcomes. They don't buy processes or tools usually. So if you name your course a process, or if you name your course a tool, unless you know it's going to work and they already buy it, you're probably going to talk more people out of it than if you name your course an outcome. So let me give you an example. If you have a weight loss market, what do people want? What's their blank check? Their blank check is some version of a smaller body, a better body, a more vibrant body, a more useful body, get into smaller clothes, right? Bikini body. They want some kind of an outcome, right? People want to lose weight for an outcome, and they want to follow a process so that they can lose weight for an outcome. So for most people, I would say nutrition is a means to an end. It's not what they're actually interested in. People are not actually interested in health unless it's the outward validation of health for most people. Now, you can fight that battle, or you can just give them what they want. And I think most of the time we can do a little bit of both, but I would lean toward give them what they want. If you title your program, how to reduce your macro calories on a daily basis, nobody's buying that unless there's somebody that's really geeked out about macro calories and that's exactly what they're looking for. That's not what people are interested in. They're interested in the outcome. So that's what I would want you to start with. Now, a few modules ago, one of my homework assignments for you was to spend 10 minutes and think about, brainstorm, what do you do for people? What do you do for people? What do you do for people? That was an outcome extension exercise. Just extend the outcomes. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Right, there you go, Michelle. I just gave you the title to your signature program, Macro Calories. Ding, ding, ding for the win. Winner, winner. Chicken dinner. So I would suggest you start with the outcomes, with the blank check that they want, and then make it distinct, make it yourself, your own. Add some of these other pieces here that I'll talk about. So you want to use your seeker's language. That's one of the reasons why we want to do seeker interviews, because you want to listen to what they're saying. If they keep saying, I want a bikini body, then pay attention. That might be something that they buy. If you say, do you want a bikini body? And they say, I want a beach body. I would suggest you say Beachbody. Use their language because you want to enter the conversation already going on in their mind. Now, don't just do this based on one person, though. That's why you want to do constant seeker interviews. You want to constantly be connected with them in Facebook groups. You constantly want to communicate and pay attention to what they're saying, how they're saying it, because your seekers will give you the title of your programs if you listen to them and you ask them what they want. And it has to be from their perspective, in their place, like what Carrie mentioned earlier, from the kindergartner's perspective, or what Lotta mentioned earlier, from the perspective of 20 years ago. Not from your perspective now, because you've already gone through the transformation and you love the process that gave you whatever outcome you're trying to help people with. But they are looking at it from before the process. They don't have that same love. You're looking downhill. They're looking uphill. So remember, what are they looking for from their perspective? Titles should also be benefit driven. Now that's usually going to happen if you're focusing on outcomes, because outcomes and benefits are very similar, not necessarily the exact same, but for the most part, they're going to come wrapped in the same package, and they should be explicitly clear. I have a personality that does not like people to know what I'm going to do. I love surprises. I don't like being bland. I didn't ask my current father-in-law if I could have Sybil's hand in marriage. That was a big jump, right? I don't like people knowing what I'm going to do. I like doing surprise parties because I have this desperate desire to be unique. One of the worst things people can say, and I can't believe I'm about to give ammo to several of you on the line who are muted because you're a troublemaker. I'm going to give you some ammo right here, though. One of the worst things people can say, I'm positive I'm going to get probably 3 texts this day giving me this exact phrase, is that I'm just like somebody else. You want to pierce my heart? Tell me that I'm just like somebody else. Tell me that you heard that exact same thing from somebody else before. That's the way to take all the wind out of my sails and just confirm that I'm a nobody, right? Like I just have this desire to be super unique. Now that does not serve me all the time. Absolutely not. But it's the truth for me. The reason I give you a little bit of that backstory is when I used to name my programs in the very beginning of my career, I would try to name them like really clever titles. I always wanted to be super, almost sneaky and clever. And I remember I sent a speaker one sheet to a coach of mine a long time ago. And on the one sheet, I said that I'm a leadership coach, and one of my leadership talks is called A Giraffe in a Field of Mice. Now, I love that idea because especially back then, I used to always say, if you want to be a leader, you need to be willing to stand out like a giraffe in a field of mice and not be worried about all the mice that are going to try to nip at your hooves. You got to stretch your neck and be willing to leave the herd of mice. And then I would go on and say, what will happen is if you are that committed to your boldness and who you truly are, you're going to walk out of this field and you're going to turn around. You're going to notice some of the mice that have been yelling at you but secretly admiring you are now starting to grow into giraffes of their own. Like I loved it. I loved the essence of it. I still do. I love the analogy, the mouse and a giraffe, the contrast. I love all of it. And he's like, what is that about? Is that about farm animals? I mean, what are you going to, what? And so my cleverness wasn't clear. And if somebody is going to hire me, clever titles are actually risky. So if I'm going to bring somebody into my leadership, into my company, let's say, if I'm going to hire a leadership coach, somebody to come in and train my people, and I've got one leadership coach that's going to come in and talk about giraffes and mice, and I've got another leadership coach that's going to come in and talk about teamwork and communication and bottom line, that's a much safer bet. So when other people are seeing your titles, if it's not really clear to them, it's giving them a reason to not trust it or question it and move on to the thing that they know they're going to get, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean be bland and dry, but don't be clever in a way that's not clear. So it's better to be explicitly clear, as long as you know this is what they want, than it is to be super clever and not have people even understand what they'd be getting from you. And this actually still kind of hurts my heart that I even have to teach this, because I don't want to. I still want to talk about giraffes and mice. Now, when it comes to YouTube videos and articles and things like that, that's a different story. The titles on articles don't necessarily apply to this, or don't require the same rules as the titles to online courses, right? First of all, they're not paid, and these are going out to your community, and they're going out in a nurturing kind of way. It's not a sales kind of a feel. So those kinds of titles can be a little bit more intriguing, can be a little bit more like, what is he talking about, or controversial, but paid courses are a little bit different. So understand what's happening in all these different arenas. Remember, laws, not rules, and it'll help you come up with the titles that feel good to you and work well for you. And you want to be catchy. Spend some time with your titles. Titles are important. A few ways to be catchy are alliteration, when things have the same letter. And that's an easy way for us to remember things. Putting things in an acronym are usually good ways, or is a good way to have material consumed, although acronyms I don't think are always the best course titles. So I didn't put it on here, but in the right time, or maybe this is like your brand. You know, one of the things that I'm doing in the men's market is branding a real man. What does that mean? A real man. And real is an acronym. REAL stands for different things. And so that might be something that works as an acronym in a title, because it's something that I really want to brand. And real man is a familiar phrase, which is that third one. So it works on that level. When we get into naming, like, we just want to look at it from all these different angles. And for me, it's super fun. To the analytical, intellectual employee brain, it's an exercise in misery. Like, can you just tell me the title, or can I just get it? Why can't I figure it out? And I'm not, when I say analytical, I'm not making I'm not saying that as people. I'm saying that when our brain gets in that mode, then creativity becomes painful a lot of times. So we all have a creative mode, and we all have that restrictive mode. This is one of those areas where we want to be creative. Rhyming helps. Short phrases help. For the most part, if you can create a title with 3 words, that's usually going to be best. A lot of the titles of my products are Releasing the Brakes, Defeating Your Fears. Emotional Mastery has 2 words. I couldn't find a little contraction, if that's what the is. I don't even know. In between there, and I didn't think it needed it. Success and Fulfillment, Effortless Leadership, Finish Strong, Change the Game. Those are some of the titles that I've used in my online courses. So generally, shorter is more powerful. It feels like a rally cry. It feels like a mission. It's something people can remember and get behind. And if it checks a lot of these boxes, then it can be a really powerful title. Let me look at a few of these comments. Lotta says, and if you have non-native English speakers, be careful with word spins and alliterations. That's a really good point. If you have a global audience, then clever becomes confusing if English isn't your first language, isn't their first language. And there's a lot of colloquialisms that we use. I'll try to think of one, and there's a ton of them that don't translate, right? Phrases that work over here that don't translate to other people that didn't grow up speaking English as their first language. And so that's a really good point. You want to have all of those considerations as well. Cool. Okay, next section, pricing your course. I don't suggest using the very popular what I'm worth method. A lot of people teach to charge what you're worth and to get what you're worth. I understand the concept. I celebrate it for the people that it works for. And in my experience, it doesn't work for most people. Now, the reason it doesn't work for most people is because your biggest limiting belief is that you're not good enough. So if your biggest limiting belief is revolving around your value, then it's going to be really difficult to use your value as the way you set prices. There's just a lot of conflict there in that conversation. And then how do you know what you're worth? I mean, honestly, that's a really difficult number to land on, especially the newer you are. So I personally don't ever myself even consider that question, what I'm worth. To me, it's not a very useful question. And I think to most teachers, most dolphins, most sensitive people, it's not going to be to produce what you probably want. If you believe that you're worth $1,723,826, like Katie just commented, that's awesome. And if your market doesn't believe that, then what you're going to experience is a lot of people basically telling you you're not worth what you think you're worth at a deeper emotional level. And when we come from what I'm worth, a lot of times there's blood in that water. There's blood in that response, meaning we answer it from a desperate standpoint. I don't think I'm worth this, but I want to be worth this. Or when I get all excited and when I'm motivated and when I've done my state change, then I'm worth this. And a lot of times we're seeking our validation in the price tag we put on ourselves. And if that desperation is coming through, then it's going to be dirty. It's not going to feel good to you. There's going to be too much temptation in your energy to cut corners or to just bend over backwards or to try to talk people into working with you. And all of that kind of energy is actually decreasing your value energetically while trying to hold out for this high value. So I'm speaking to people that struggle with naming prices based on what I'm worth, and I'm trying to explain to you why. Again, if this works for you, then do whatever works for you. I don't have any problem with anybody doing whatever works. My experience is it's easier to just take all of that emotional turmoil out of it and just go, what will this market pay? Because whatever this market will pay is what it's worth in dollar amounts. The market determines the dollar value of the program, not the content. What a lot of people will do is they'll go, I'm going to teach this content which changed my life. Therefore, it's worth what I now think it's worth looking down the hill that I ran up or was dragged up. So now I would pay all of this money for what I now know is the value. So because of all of that, I'm going to price my program at $497. And because I see that's what other programs are being priced at, or that's what other people are suggesting, or for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. But the reality is, if there's energetic turmoil, that's going to get projected. It's going to get projected in the copy, in the emails, in the selling of it. It's all going to get projected. So I want it to be clean for you energetically. And it's just easier to pick a price that the market will pay based on similar things that they're willing to pay, unless there's overwhelming evidence for you to be different, or for you to say, I don't want 10 people in this program at $200. I want one person at $2,000. Great. If that's your reasoning and there's overwhelming evidence to do it that way, then absolutely do it that way, because that feels better to you. Laws, not rules. But the more that we can pull it off of our personal value structure, the easier it's going to be, in my experience. And the newer you are, the more I suggest you use no-brainer pricing. The higher the price, the higher the sell. The harder the sell. The longer the sell, usually. So what it takes to sell a $2,000 program is different than what it takes to sell a $200 program. And if you want a $2,000 program because of what I said a moment ago, then that's great. Just understand you got to sell that differently than a $200 program. And if that's okay with you, then fine. All of this just needs to be intentional. But the newer you are, my suggestion is use no-brainer pricing. So that's just one of the variables you don't have to wrestle with. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time selling something that you haven't taught before, because there's some uncertainty there. And my philosophy is remove as much uncertainty as possible. So these are guidelines. You have ultimate permission to say no to all of these suggestions and do what's going to work for you, as long as there's a reason to, as long as there's intention.